Hey folks, Phil Gallagher of ThrabenU here for a Legacy Death and Taxes tutoring video. This was something that I recorded last week, so just giving you a couple heads up about a couple of things here. Number one, the deck list that is being played is a pretty stock Yorion deck list. Number two, this is something that I did with someone else, so all of the dead time is not edited out of the video. It's much harder to do that when I'm doing cooperative content. So if you're used to my content just moving like super, super fast, consider watching this at double speed. And number three, if you enjoy this content, please consider becoming a YouTube member. In addition to supporting me, you will also gain access to another tutoring session that I just posted for only my members. All right, with that being said, I hope you enjoyed, and please consider leaving me, a like or a comment on this video if you have something to say. All right, here we go. All right, so what do you think of your opening hand?
I think this hand looks like a strong keep on the basis of Vial and Plains with backup lands and a solid curve. Let's hope we don't get Force of Willed, hey?
Absolute keep, yeah.
Okay.
I don't even think you're that sad if you get Force of Willed, right? Like, you still have a turn 2 Thalia or Spirit of Labyrinth as a reasonable play as well. I don't think you have anything to worry about even with Force of Will.
Yeah. There we go. I feel so much better.
Yep, so we're very likely to be playing against a blue-red Delver deck after seeing Force Pitching Days, and there it is.
Okay, so I think Wasteland into Thalia.
That sounds great.
Yeah, because,
you want to play the thing that doesn't trade with Ragavan and makes it harder to remove your own blocker here.
Right, try to limit the amount of spells I could cast, even if they did get rid of it.
Yeah, so your opponent has to go land, natural lightning bolt, or other removal spell in hand in order to get rid of Thalia. Okay, and they have the ending.
There we go.
You know how that ending and Thalia interaction works?
They pay more, which gives them greater removal capability, so they just do it for one, it ends up being for two, and it ends up being the same.
Yeah, exactly. Good.
So now I want to play out this saga, and probably I'm thinking Recruiter.
Okay, so you have a choice here. You can either play the Recruiter, which trades with Ragavan well and gets you something that's more relevant, but if you do that, you're exposed to Daze. Or you can play the Spirit of the Labyrinth that's played around Daze, but you don't super want to trade it for Ragavan. Like, you would, given the opportunity, but you have, like, worse things that you can trade for Ragavan. So it's just a question of, like, am I playing around Daze this turn? Or since they pitched one Daze already, do I think they just don't have one?
Yeah, I think it's really not good if they hit me, because then they can start casting they can already cast things that they rip with Ragavan at this point. Yeah, I'm inclined to play the Recruiter.
Okay, let's do it and see how it works out for us.
Hope to hit a white. I want to keep my land. Don't want to.
Yeah. So our goal here is to get to 4 mana, one of which is another white, so we can start using Skyclave Apparition on things like Ragavans on the other side of the table. Okay, it's resolved. What are you getting?
Oh man, I should have been thinking about that. I think I'm in for. Part of me wants to get Stoneforge. Part of me wants to get Solitude.
Okay, let me ask you a question. How do you lose this game?
I lose this game to a very large Murktide Regent.
How do you stop Murktide Regent?
What's up?
How do you stop a Murktide Regent from killing you?
I cast a Solitude.
Okay, let's grab a Solitude then. So right now, our current plan is get past this Ragavan, make some more land drops, eventually bury the opponent in higher card quality with things like Yorion coming in and multiple blinks on some of these creatures.
Yeah, because I figure if they didn't have the counter, so they got to have more removal, right?
All right. So now your next question is like, are you willing to use the Solitude on the Ragavan? It
I was
appears that the answer was no.
I yeah, I was gonna hope to hit another white before we had to make this decision because they're low on cards. They could play it anyways if they wanted it. It wouldn't be super impressive, but it's enough to kill me. But
It does seem like one is coming here.
here we go.
Okay. So
We want to do it on our turn or their turn.
We probably want to do this with our mana untapped so that if our opponent's last card is dazed, we don't get just absolutely savaged.
Yeah.
Okay. Feels good to win games of Magic.
Hey,
what a set of cards.
Speak truth into, you have to dream it into existence, right? So I think I want to pitch this. I want to pitch a Skyclave to Solitude first.
That sounds great.
And then I want to sweep up with Skyclave.
Sounds great. Oh yeah, this is living the dream with D&T here.
Yeah, we are having a good time, aren't we?
Yes. So now the next question is, would you like to wasteland your opponent? So they have a Lotus Petals, so to speak, so you can't knock them off of white. So the next question is like, how are you valuing your cards here? Is your wasteland better than their Tundra?
I think it is. Just I'm trying to make mana play cards next turn, put Yorion in hand at some point, play Yorion without a vial. So
okay, sounds good. I think especially considering that your Urza Saga is about to disappear, I think it's totally reasonable to not wasteland in this position. Now, if they didn't have a treasure token, it becomes an entirely different thing, right? Because then you do knock them off a color entirely. Oh, that's actually a fantastic draw.
Yeah. Okay. Easy choice here. Because we can just do everything we want. Now, I'm thinking that a Retrofitter Foundry is a good way to sweep this up.
Honestly, all three of these cards are pretty good here. The Vial is probably the worst of the options. Like, you're going to get too hard casting most of your stuff mana. So it's just a question of, like, do you want that lifelink, or do you want the go wide ability and be able to do more with your construct?
Yeah, I mean, I think I put my opponent on land or Force of Will at this point.
That sounds about right. Yeah, land, daze, Force of Will are the most likely things.
So I don't necessarily even want to play the Spirit right now. I think I would rather just sit behind this Retrofitter Foundry.
Okay.
Until they do something.
I think it's also reasonable to just play the Spirit around a daze.
Okay.
Like you still have something to do with your mana this turn via Retrofitter Foundry. So I think you can absolutely wait a turn to Spirit.
Definitely, yeah. This is like the easiest game against Delver I've ever played.
Yeah.
No offense, Rock Nation. All in the draws.
Okay, that was lag for the concession, I see.
Yeah.
All right, good stuff. All right.
Okay.
What are you bringing in?
Well, I'm always curious is if it's a So I like the Rest in Peace. I like the Lantern and the Peacekeeper. I think I like Peacekeeper on the back of protecting Mother of Runes, and like, I don't know if that's reasonable, because they just kill Mother as soon as they see it. But so these are the cards, and probably a Council's Judgment for Murktide Regent as well. Continued Priest, no, Canonist. Canonist is probably not terrible,
But it's
so that's a
probably
way
not
to.
really good either, right?
Right.
It would be the sort of thing where if you feel like you have a particularly weak card in the matchup, like you could drop it.
Yeah.
Or you could bring it in, but spoilers, this deck is very clearly geared to beat Delver.
I'm curious what they look like when they aren't geared to beat Delver. Then.
Yeah, I mean, if you look, there's 4 swords main, there's 3 Skyclave apparitions, there's 4 solitudes, there's Flicker Wisps that trade with Delver, there's the Stoneforge Mystic package for lifelink. Uh, there's so much here.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so in terms of cards to take out, then I never really get behind this card. I just sort of put in there Cathar. Yeah, I don't actually know how to sideboard for this deck. That's kind of part of it too.
Okay.
So
Generally
Spike
speaking,
Apparition is not that great, is it?
I mean, it kills the Ragavans. It's a removal spell. So generally
Okay.
speaking, in a lot of these situations, I end up pulling some number of Recruiter of the Guards out. They're a little bit slow, and if you get to the point where you start doing your thing anyway, you're going to tend to win. You want to board in those 4 cards, that's totally fine. I will say that Soul Guide Lantern is not necessarily an absolute slam dunk. We've got 15 seconds left, so feel free to just leave it in. Okay, that's fine. Yeah.
I will take your word for it. I mean, I think a Timeless Dragon is a totally reasonable card.
Yeah.
I'm so used to playing Modern, where it's just like you have to relic the graveyard against that Murktide region, or I just play relic decks anyways.
Yeah. Whereas here, like we have Mom plus Flyers, we have Solitudes, we have some number of recruiters to find them, we have Swords to Plowshares. Like, yeah, you have a lot of options.
Yeah. Okay. On the draw, I think this hand is slow, potentially okay on the back of swords, but port is my other land. Not having other planes, it's like looks like you just lose to the fast draw with the days back up and the forces potentially with a wasteland here or there.
Okay. So a lot of times what I tell people in evaluating hands is ignore the worst card. So let's ignore the Peacekeeper that's not good right now.
Yeah.
Would you be willing to keep this hand on 6?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. Do you think you are going to find a better 6-card hand than the 6-card hand that ignores Peacekeeper?
I don't think so.
Okay, then let's keep this. I think this is a hand where like you accept if your opponent just has the absolute nuts and plays like early threat into wasteland you and you don't draw the land. Like yes, you might not win those, but you have a large number of lands in your deck. What's the Yorion number? Are you on like 33 lands or something like that?
33, 34, yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, just to make life easy.
All right. So are you going to source the Plowshares, this Dragon Rage Channeler on turn 1?
Yeah, I'm thinking. Well, I got this Rest in Peace though, hey.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't necessarily. I think I can play it a little slow. And if they try to dash a Ragavan, I'll sit back. I mean, you can get dazed on that, but if you do that,
Yeah, I think waiting to see if your opponent dashes in a Ragavan is reasonable.
yeah,
So by not removing it now, there's some worlds where your opponent gets to dump an extra card or 2 in the graveyard. But if you've already got like a Rest in Peace as a follow-up play and a Solitude for a Murktide that slips through, I don't think it's super relevant that they get a little like Scry plus graveyard action.
yeah.
Okay, yeah. So you're super rewarded for your line here.
So I feel like just swordsing it.
Sounds good.
Hey, man,
Yeah.
just
And we got this in a window where that Caracas was tapped, so they can't protect it, which is super good.
yeah. Okie doke. Well, they didn't daze that, so stands to reason. I
Yeah,
should just
I think your
Thalia
rest in
play.
peace is going to resolve.
Oh, see, I was going to play Thalia, but there you go, Phil.
Your opponent has Caracas. Just saying. Just saying.
Thank you for saving me from myself.
I mean, I've made that mistake so many times, so no worries.
Yeah. So they play some number of, like, one Brazen Bar, maybe. Oh, okay. Alpine Moon, huh? Okay.
Now, I forget the exact text. Does that turn our land into a land that taps for any... Oh, wow. Straight up on Urza's Saga.
Yeah.
That is some respect.
That is what? That kind of implies we don't have a lot of removal. Kind of a weak hand, hey?
I think they're afraid of the card advantage over time that represents. I'm just sort of surprised that they didn't just shut off the port that was in play. That might mean that they just have more than enough mana to do what they do.
Yeah, that makes sense for sure. Well, I kind of feel like Skyclaving.
Absolutely.
And
You don't care if you trade for a daze. You don't care if like your opponent lightning bolts it and then like they have a 1/1 token. You don't care about any of that right now.
yeah. And I don't care about the enchantment yet. Between the other one and the Yorion backup, I think, wow, okay.
Yeah, so your opponent might have either just like too much land, or they might have something at sorcery speed, like say a prismatic ending, or they might have like a Murktide Regent that's stuck in their hand. All right, they get to fix some of it now. Yeah, I don't really have anything else exciting to say about this board state. It's just, you know, we've been doing all of the things. They haven't been doing anything. Like, they haven't cast an expressive iteration at all to, like, get ahead on card value.
Right. Yeah. I hope we play against lands, because I cannot seem to beat that matchup. I've played that maybe 5 times now, and it's just like they seem to always have me.
It's a slog. Okay, just real quick, did you bard out the Cathar Commando, by the way?
I did.
Okay, just to talk about this, something to keep in mind for these sorts of matchups is that sometimes Torpor Orb is something that sees play out of their sideboards.
Yeah.
So if you keep the Cathar Commando in the deck, you have an answer to things like the Torpor Orb or like Pithing Needles that sometimes see play. So even though the Cathar Commando does nothing in game 1 scenarios, in game 2 and 3 scenarios against a lot of these decks, it has real text.
That's a good, yeah. I've definitely lost hard to a couple of Torpor Orbs before. So yeah, I just totally spaced that.
Yeah. Now you're not going to have many outs to it, right? And you're playing an 80 card deck. So like the difference between boarding in the Cathar Commando and not boarding it in is a difference of 1 out to something versus 2 outs to something. So it's still a little rough, but it helps.
Yeah, I think it's good. It almost feels like win more, because if you're in a position where you can recruiter for it, you're probably already winning.
Correct.
And if it's in play, right, you can't go get it. But yeah, definitely better to have it than like probably just a recruiter in the face of a Torpor Orb, because yeah, these guys don't lose anything from playing them.
So let's say you don't draw a relevant spell. What are you going to be doing on your next turn?
I am fixing to put Yorion in hand, I think. my thought is that eventually this thing is going to die, but no time soon. And I'd like to have some extra cards for, and I'd like to have some extra cards for Solitude, and that Peacekeeper, if I played it out, would just get rocked. It doesn't really do anything anyways.
Yeah, it also would have been reasonable to just decide to port your opponent and try to make it harder for them to cast an expressive iteration that they maybe found this turn.
Okay. Lovely.
And this is why I edit downtime out of videos. Sometimes there's just nothing to say. Okay.
Yeah.
Little misstep there. Even though your opponent had Caracas up, I still would have cast the Thalia, right?
Yeah.
So like in those times where they F6 or they just like forget the fact that they have Caracas, like you end up with something that costs them a mana, either by them tapping the Caracas or something like that.
Sure.
It also can do things like prevent them from just casting end of turn Swords to Plowshares on the Skyclave and beginning to attack, because they would have to like tap another land to get the Thalia out of there or something.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, and here's the exact expressive iteration thing that I was talking about. Our opponent wastelanded us, so we couldn't actually like use the port to attack that, but expressive iteration is exactly the sort of thing that they might have been digging towards.
Yeah, it's the beginning of a turnaround potentially here. We're hoping for land, please.
Well, it's pretty hard for them to get the turnaround, right?
Yeah.
Like in this situation, depending on what their threat suite looks like, they're really looking for a Ragavan. We kind of have that covered on multiple different angles.
I'll just swing and play Thalia after combat.
Yep, and we'll expect that the Thalia will just get bounced back to our hand. If it doesn't, cool, but we just have nothing else to do with our mana. See, it happens. I swear it happens all the time.
Yeah, you're right. Free stuff.
Yep. See, they did it on their turn instead of our turn. That's just a bonus mana for us.
Hey, taxes, baby.
And see, now the cool thing is, since your opponent made that mistake once, they're now kind of stuck in this loop where you have to play Thalia out again, and then they have to like use their mana on their own turn to get rid of that.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Sadness.
That's okay. Right? Like, opponent's graveyard now has one card in it. They're still very far away from Murktide.
Yep. And this feels like an easy Stoneforge Mystic here.
Yeah, we have so many things to do with our mana once we have more of it, that just like playing something reasonable right now is good.
Opponent super not interested in presenting any front against not having counter magic. I'm inclined to get the Jitte.
That sounds good to me.
Yeah, because otherwise this thing dies then.
Yeah, it's the one piece of equipment that has a high impact in the matchup that you can also hard cast.
Okay.
This also like might not immediately prompt the removal spell from the opponent since you got Jitte, and if they don't, Kaldra comes in.
Yeah.
And Kaldra is disgusting.
Yeah. It was a sad moment for me when I realized that it has first strike and that kills everything ability. I was like, oh, no, this is a totally reasonable card. I love combat.
Yeah, I looked at that card and I went, yeah, I would probably test that in the place of some other piece of equipment. And now it's just like, okay, yeah, I've played with this card. This is just an auto, like it's in the deck every time now. Absolute game changer.
Game changer.
Oh ho. Oh ho.
Spicy. Being your upkeep, crit a 1/1. If you're the monarch, crit a 4/4. Okay, so huh. So I can expect at least one piece of removal and maybe two.
Yeah. So I would guess that you should expect one piece of removal, and your
Yeah.
opponent's plan is to use a piece of removal on Skyclave Apparition and then try to block the Stoneforge. But since you have Cauldron in hand, that probably fucks things up. So I would
Yeah.
put in the Cauldron and bash and see where we go.
Well, how about this? So if we play Thalia, then and we swing with like Stoneforge and Skyclave, we know we're getting the Monarch.
Let's see. So not true, right? So you play Thalia. In response, your opponent fetches and uses a removal spell on Skyclave. That then gives them a blocker. So that's not actually true.
Your opponent fetches and does what? Sorry.
Okay, so your opponent, like, let's say they have a Lightning Bolt. So
Yeah.
you cast Thalia. They fetch
Okay.
Lightning Bolt Skyclave. That gives them a blocker. They can chump block the Stoneforge, and you don't actually become the Monarch. So I would put in your
Solitude. I can Solitude whatever that token if I want.
okay. Are you good with hemorrhaging that many resources though?
Well,
It seems like you're trying to get cute here when we have a borderline unanswerable death machine.
let's play the Death Machine.
Like, this is going to require your opponent to both have, like, Swords to Plowshares and a second removal spell as well.
Solitude is probably better used on the 4/4 if it ever shows up.
Yeah, or on the Murktide Regent that might actually beat you.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, if we don't draw a Lanson, we could definitely lose this game.
yeah. At the end of the day, remember, like, you have 2 answers in hand to this Court of Grace.
Yes.
So
yes.
the 1/1 that is likely to occur isn't that big of a deal. Even
And
the
I have
4/4 isn't that big of a deal.
right. And now you're saying how I lose to impatience on a regular basis by spewing resources.
So if the opponent doesn't have Caracas in play, like, what you're considering doing is slightly better. But, like, the fact that this Skyclave Apparition specifically ends up, like, generating a blocker if your opponent uses a removal spell on it is super weird in this scenario.
Yeah. Absolutely right. Okay. And fingers crossed.
Yeah,
Yoki.
that's fine. Is there a second removal spell?
Oh, doesn't look like it. Oh. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Oh, feels good.
Yeah, so now we don't really care about this 1/1 blocker that our opponent is going to have. Like, that's somewhat irrelevant.
Yeah. Probably just pitching this Peacekeeper.
Yeah, I don't think Peacekeeper is where we're at right now. Oh, very
Yeah.
nice. Yeah, we have so many good cards here. Flicker Wisp for Cauldra is disgusting. Council's Judgment or Skyclave for Court of Grace is disgusting.
Now, do I dash? Do I kill a dashed Ragavan? Non-question.
Yeah, that's a real question.
That's what I thought was happening. Okay. Well, what do we say? So I feel like just stone forging in this play another, like, I don't know. Kind of want to just like flash in this Jitte with Stoneforge.
Okay. So if you wait on that, you can hold back the Stoneforge to block the illusion token.
Right.
It's kind of weird, but you could play a Solitude right now, pitching this Thalia that's not really going to be good, eliminate that spirit token, and then not actually draw, or not actually have to discard a card, and keep the Monarch for another turn cycle.
Yeah, it seems good.
Yeah, and then we're hoping to just get a land to take the Court of Grace out of the equation, and then we can probably defend the Monarch pretty well.
Nice.
There we go.
All right, quite nice.
Is this Court of Grace something you see in these Jeskai lists pretty regularly?
I don't think I'd go so far as to say regularly. Like it's tech that's around. It tends to be more common in like the slightly bigger controlling decks. But this opponent seems to be going slightly bigger than normal, right? Like they've got the Mystic Sanctuary and they've got the Court of Grace.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is going to be one of those games where as soon as we start regularly making land drops, and especially once we get to the point where we can start playing around days, game tips very quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, this third land is gonna be big game. So on my turn, I'll have a Jitte in play. I feel like I want to Flicker Wisp Cauldra, get the game over with, kind of try to work to make this Court of Grace like kind of a non-card at some point.
So what card would you want to play around days no matter what? It's like you have 3 different 3-drop options next turn. Like say there's one of them that you really want to resolve. What card would you really want to resolve?
Probably the Skyclave, just because it gets rid of Court of Grace.
Here, go ahead and click OK so your opponent can do their ponder.
I have 2 Flicker Wisp.
Yeah, your Flicker Wisps are expendable since you have 2 of them. You really need one of either Skyclave Apparition or Council's Judgment to resolve.
Yeah. I feel like I want to play Judgment last because it can handle a Murktide Regent.
Okay, that's reasonable.
Thinking it's trying to play Flicker Wisps into Skyclave into Council's Judgment.
That's reasonable. Or alternatively, like you could say, like, I'm okay with the Skyclave getting countered if the Council's Judgment afterward resolves.
Yeah.
It's kind of going to be one of those scenarios where most of your lines are pretty good. Like, and there's also going to be lines where you straight up just like equip a Jitte and get in there. All right, so we'll block that. If opponent has a weird electrickery type card that deals 1 damage. Ooh, they do.
Hey. All right. Okie doke. I don't like this card hanging around, to be honest with you, though.
So this might be a time where you consider not playing around days and just trying to take out that Court of Grace.
Yeah. Court of Grace gets canceled. They return the Mystic Sanctuary to their hand. They get back ending. They ending Jitte. or the Cauldron token later. Yeah. Anyways, yeah. This thing has, okay, it does not have
Yeah, it's 1 damage.
Oh my gosh, too easy. Okay, well.
The dream draw right here is a Solitude.
Right.
That's
pretty good one.
Yeah, no big deal. So the thing that's slightly spooky is the opponent having a removal spell for the Skyclave that then generates a 4/4 body. That's a little annoying.
Yeah. Yeah. Because then yeah, someone played this against me yesterday, and I was like, "What is this card?"
This is wild.
Yeah, like some 8-whack. It was like a Blood Moon 8-whack deck, and he did that to me. I was like, "Okay, this is a good card now, I guess." Whatever. Okay. My heart gently weeps. So I'm wanting to kill that Staticaster with the swords and first, and then play a Shadow Spear.
Okay. So you just want to do that to clear way for a Flicker Wisp in the future? That's your rationale there?
Yeah, because this thing's gonna mop up basically a lot that we play. Because these are gonna come down and pull these guys out of commission, is my thought.
Okay.
They kind of just bank on drawing a land eventually.
Okay. So how are you going to get the Monarch back, and when are you going to get the Monarch back? Like, alternatively, you could play a Stoneforge Mystic this turn and threaten to either put in a Batterskull that's as good as or better than these bodies, or just turn it sideways after playing a removal spell and steal the Monarch back.
See, this feels like Force of Will to me.
Okay.
But it's, I suppose I'd rather have him Force of Will this than the removal spell that saves me from dying that I can play later
Sure.
with other, or they just never have any counter magic, and that's
Yeah, every body that's in play threatens to make this Jitte into a good card as well.
yes. Okay.
Ooh, seems like it is Murktide time.
Okay.
Land? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Life's pretty good now.
So try to swords this thing
That sounds
and
good.
yeah.
Yeah, the Murktide Regent needs to leave play, or you die very quickly.
All right. Here we go.
Yeah, your alternative is putting in Batterskull this turn. I think it ends up being pretty good either way. Like, becoming the Monarch is super cool though.
I'm a fan of that. We'll do a land.
Kind of a land.
Yeah, kind of. I think I want to get rid of the spirit token and take a hit from the illusion.
That sounds fine.
Keep the Forge Mystic out of range of a bolt.
Yeah, your goal is potentially to attack in with Stoneforge Mystic one more time. Like, then you have enough counters to beat an Is It Staticaster in combat. If you kill the Is It Staticaster, you get to just like start Flicker Wisping these tokens.
Maybe.
Port's a great draw. Very happy with that.
Yeah, I think I like that better. Let's see. Mash, and then after combat, probably play Flicker Wisp.
Sure. So,
I'm just gonna let this happen.
okay.
Okay. So then I'm gonna kill that.
Sounds good.
This could potentially die to bolt, but
If your opponent had a bolt, your Stoneforge wouldn't have gotten in. All right, so play Port. Yeah. Now you can Flicker Wisp and remove that token. And it should be pretty straightforward from here. Like, we've got a Batter Skull that we can put in. We've got a Shadow Spear. We're nearing the point where we can just straight up equip a Cauldra. We have plenty of removal spells waiting in the tank.
okay.
Yeah, life's pretty good.
Yeah, I feel very empowered. Have fun.
What is that targeting? The Jitte, I assume? Oh, it's the
Flicker
Flicker
Wisp.
Wisp, actually. Cool.
Yeah. All right. Well, have at it. Okay. I guess just get in there and play a Flicker Wisp afterward is what I'm thinking.
I mean, you could straight up pre-combat do Flicker Wisp if you wanted. You have a lot of different lines here. Your opponent seems like they're going to chump block if you attack in.
Yeah. Which isn't necessarily what I want.
I mean, but you can make them do that if you want. I think it's fine.
Yeah, if we're just abyssing, then I suppose it's not too bad. Okay, finally some interaction.
Oh, that's fine.
So apparition into Stoneforge Mystic, huh?
Or, well, your Urza Saga isn't a real land right now, right? Because of Alpine Moon. Yeah, so.
See, this is why you teach this stuff.
Yep. Yeah, feel free to just play the Skyclave Apparition and then the Shadow Spear. Or you can Flicker Wisp your Cauldra if you want. Yeah, play your Shadow Spear, though. You're not in much danger of losing this game to anything other than the clock.
Yeah. Yeah, I think. Okay. Press down.
That might have been just simply I am getting one card deeper in my deck.
Yeah, that looks just like a cantrip to me. Meltdown. Okay. So by now, I just want to get this Flicker Wisp on the Cauldra thing. I'm tired of not having another big nasty threat.
Yeah, I mean, we'll attack with the Skyclave first and, like, just try to take the Monarch back. But yeah, I think that's the plan for this turn. All right, great success. This is a long pause. I wonder if this is a Force of Will.
And that's also a card.
A second one. Interesting.
Mm.
Again, not super a big deal, though.
Right.
I don't think I'm going to play around another, what is it, end the festivities.
Yeah, right. Legacy wedding crasher in the festivities.
Wow, another, that's, oh no, that was returned via days. Never mind.
It's a nice interaction. Seems really slow.
Oh, it is. I mean, but like our opponent's deck is painfully slow, right? This is turn 15.
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
Like every copy of like these dress downs, meltdowns, and the festivities is Staticasters and such that gets added to their deck is just like another card that's not actually ending the game.
Sure, yeah. Hey, I'm all about it. Oh, I'm not playing that one. Promise. Well, I guess I want to try maybe the Solitude that thing off a Stoneforge Mystic.
I mean, do you have to kill that thing? You just want to trade Flicker Wisp for it, and if your opponent uses a removal spell on Flicker Wisp, then you kill it.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to even attack with Flicker Wisp here. Like, because if you attack, it invites your opponent to attack back and potentially take the Monarch back. Just play a Stoneforge Mystic and threaten your Batterskull, I guess. But I probably wouldn't have attacked there.
I'm hearing you now. I'm doing the thing what I do when I play is like I have to win. Okay, we've got nothing to show you.
Yeah, so like you put yourself in this awkward spot. I
I
would
want to port this thing, but then I can get
I would
bait.
not port.
Yeah.
Yeah, you put yourself in this awkward spot now where, like, if you want to keep your opponent from becoming the Monarch, you have to pitch this Council's Judgment, making a Murktide Regent better against you in the future.
Yeah, I don't think I want to do that anyways.
Okay.
Targeting Stoneforge, okay.
Sure. Yeah, and then I would just port down one of your opponent's lands at end of turn here.
Let's see, I just want to attack.
Yep.
But
Yep. Turn him sideways. We've got a minute. We have to try to end the game. So at this point, you might want to consider just like playing a Council's Judgment to take that creature out of play, so you don't have to fight the Monarch subgame here. It's not what you want to use this card for, but like we've got a Solitude left over for the Murktide Regent. Yeah, and we wanted to do this prior to playing the 1-drop for this reason. It's okay.
And we wanted to be a Retrofitter Foundry too.
Yeah, so it becomes very difficult to lose this game with these cards if you're like not in a tutoring session where we're talking over everything, right?
Right, yeah. Yeah, and I think I would have lost if they had been a faster deck. You know, if they were playing threats instead of just sitting there, or maybe they just had terrible draws.
I mean, I don't think you get to call like the Staticasters and Meltdowns and such terrible draws, right? Like they put them in the deck for matchups just like these.
Yeah, sure.
But like because they're not proactively ending the game, they end up in a sort of a difficult spot. Yeah, so you're more or less going to be forced to play Wasteland and hardcast Solitude unless you draw a white card that lets you play around another days.
Yeah.
Is it a second one? That's real gross if that's the case.
Yeah, that would be nasty.
Yeah, if that's a second Murktide Regent, I don't know that we can win because we're going to give our opponent so much life when we Solitude one of these.
And in the late game, should have been much more sensitive to days because that Mystic Sanctuary. Yeah, it doesn't matter, does it?
Yeah, I mean, you're going to attempt to play the Solitude and try to get into a winning situation next turn. But with 20 seconds left, we're not getting there either way.
Okay.
Yeah, so if this game were to go on for a couple more turns, we would chump block the Murktide Regent with a Flicker Wisp. We would have 5 damage on board and potentially be attacking for lethal. Opponent's forced to chump block with their 1/1. We have a Batter's Skull. Like we're still potentially in that game, even after like those multiple Murktide rips.
Yeah.
But there were some little optimization things even in those last couple of turns that mattered, right? Like playing the Ether Vial out prior to playing the Council's Judgment was a big one. Like there's still plenty of little things that we could have done to even potentially just made this one winnable. block aside.
Yeah, I think the one that those things are kind of like duh, you kind of race and you stop thinking things. More interesting to me is that I didn't go when you were like play the Stoneforge, threaten to make your Umazawa's Jitte. Like that was like I was talking about different lines sort of around that. And I was like, oh, that's just like so clearly the best thing to do. And I didn't even like that's the thing I keep thinking about in that matchup.
Yeah. So if your opponent plays a 4-drop in Legacy, the game probably starts to revolve around it, right? So what that game boiled down to was like the Monarch sub game has started. That now becomes one of the most important things. Like another line was like on the turn where you attacked with Stoneforge into the Izzet Staticaster, where it was a 0/3. You also could have played. You had some removal spell. You could have played a pre-combat removal spell on Izzet Staticaster to get it out of the way, and then have a better chance of connecting with the Stoneforge, and then like you end up being the Monarch. So like there's lots of points in that game where slightly different decisions can lead to very different games.
Yeah.
All right.
Eek.
Just auto mulligan.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a risky player, but I'm not that risky. So this one also feels terrible.
This is not a great hand. Are we in the play or draw?
We are on the play.
Yeah, this is still really rough. Like you throw back the Cauldra and you have an Ether Vial that can't really vial in anything anytime soon. I think this
Yeah.
one still has to be a mulligan too, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Whereas
Okay.
this hand is pretty
Thanks.
good.
Yeah. I'm down with this. So I think I want to put back Caracas and um it's either Solitude or Spirit.
I think it's Solitude.
Yeah.
Like once you've gone down 2 cards, the idea of pitching another one immediately isn't super appealing.
And we basically have to have this resolve if we to
Yes,
win.
I agree. I think your chances of winning go down like literally 20 or 30% if that Aether Vial gets countered.
Yeah.
Oh, this is a good sign for us.
Okay, so when it's a preordain, what do we know about it instead of like a ponder or just a brainstormer? What do we
If it's preordained, there's a greater chance that you're playing against a combo deck of some kind.
okay.
And like we have a Spirit of Labyrinth in hand. All right, what are you doing this turn?
Well, if it's combo deck, so I'm thinking Doomsday, maybe. So that makes me want to play Port. But I don't know. I mean, what do they do with
I would port them, yes.
Yeah, I
You
would
you
one
have
and
this
more.
very powerful Spirit of the Labyrinth coming next turn. You want to put it in uncounterably. You don't necessarily want to just immediately expose a Stoneforge Mystic to a Daze. I think porting them here is just quite good.
Yeah.
So a lot of times when I see preordain, a lot of times I start thinking things along the lines of show and tell.
Oh,
So like
yep.
we've seen 2 just straight up islands in a row.
Yeah.
So like decks like show and tell and high tide, and like the mono blue omniscience. Those are the sort of things that I start thinking about here.
So in terms of what we play and flash or port, I suppose
I would port basically for the rest of the game.
okay, and then I'll vial this in now and
So
um
that's a real choice, and I'll talk about that as our opponent's turn goes on. You're gonna say yes now that you've clicked on it, and I would just put the spirit in. But you can decide whether or not you want to play around them, like casting a brainstorm in response to you tipping an ether vial, or if you want to just say like you don't get to cantrip. Because like there's a surprise factor to be had, and getting a brainstorm with the spirit of the labyrinth is just absolutely gross.
yeah. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yep. Yep.
Okay, so we are playing against High Tide.
Okay. I'm pretty ignorant of this, aside from I know the gist of it. How do they kill you? Is that brain freeze or oracle? What is it?
So they tend to kill you either with brain freeze or a very large blue sun zenith that makes you draw your entire library.
Cunning Wish. Cunning Wish goes for what?
I believe it is an instant from your sideboard.
What do you think
Oh,
that they grab?
so there's a couple of chains that can happen. A lot of times, a cunning wish is used to get something like a shared, or sorry, not a shared summons, wrong deck. It can be used to get a high tide if you're playing a copy in there. It can be used to get like a turnabout to get more mana. There's a lot of options. It can
Okay,
also
so
be
it's
used to
all
grab some random sideboard hate cards.
so vintage cube storm cards or
Yes.
hate cards. Okay. I want to tick it up and flash it in before it goes. I take it.
Oh, so you want to put in your Stoneforge and then tick it up to 3?
I think that
Yeah,
sounds
that's reasonable.
good. I can't do it now. I have to put it.
Yeah, and this is absolutely a grab Cauldra sort of situation. You want to be able to end this game as quickly as possible, and that haste very much matters.
It doesn't feel like a great draw.
Nope.
I don't think. Do they play Lotus Petal?
No, you're not going to be expecting artifact mana. You're probably never going to play that Skyclave apparition,
Okay.
and I would just
Yeah.
consider porting your opponent here. So a weird thing about this matchup is in the early game you port in the upkeep, but once you get to the later game, you often wait so that you can port in response to a high tide.
Nice. Okay. Okay.
So we're not at enough land drops yet where that's the case, but we might be soon. Your opponent's also somewhat likely to just use this turn to Cunning Wish for something that gets Spirit of the Labyrinth out of play, because that card is obnoxious.
Turnabout. So they revealed Turnabout and Cunning Wish. Okay. So we're Cunning Wish and actually, so Thalia is a great draw. Let's draw Thalia.
Thalia is an okay draw. The High Tide deck will eventually overpower a Thalia, because once you have 2 High Tides, you don't really care about Thalia anymore.
Okay.
So if this Skyclave apparition doesn't have any targets, you can consider just putting it in as a straight up 2/2 right here.
Like that.
Just kind of a question of like, are you ticking that vial up to 4 immediately to work towards Yorion in the next turn or two?
That was my plan. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm just trying to get it to the point where it can just put more things in play while keeping the port pressure.
Yeah, I mean, we'll put the Cauldron in, swing for 8. Opponent's dead next turn. So this is probably your turn where you consider not not porting your opponent until they cast a High Tide, because you trying to port them and then like having a High Tide happen in response is a little annoying.
Okay.
I'm not
Also shut off
entirely
the
sure if that's correct. I don't know what their outs are from this situation in terms of mana. Like, I've played High Tide. I know some of the lines. I don't know, like, how do I beat a Spirit of the Labyrinth from 4 lands with 1
yeah.
High Tide? Like, I don't know that off the top of my head.
Okay. Hmm.
Nice thing is that unless our opponent bounces the Germ token, like them bouncing the Spirit and then failing to go off still leaves lethal power in play.
Yeah, not bad for a mold of 5.
Yeah, no, that came together very well.
Yeah.
We also have a good assortment of cards in the sideboard for this, I imagine, because most of the Yorion sideboard ends up being like anti-combo stuff. And we have a lot of stuff we can cut here. Like our Skyclaves aren't particularly good. Our Swords to Plowshares aren't really having targets. Our Commando's not particularly great either.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff like Shadow Spear also can just go. Yep. Okay. That's not surprising. All right. So maybe let's make a pile of stuff we're going to bring in and then take out an appropriate number of cards.
Um, doesn't seem like it does anything. So these 4 I'm pretty solid on
Mm-hmm.
for the obvious reason. These seem to me to be cards, but they don't necessarily do that much in the blue versions, like the mono blue version that I don't really know.
Yeah. So the Graveyard Hate's not really great. Like, you can do something like Surgical a High Tide, and it will make it harder for your opponent to go off. But sometimes people play around like a Surgical on a High Tide by boarding one out. I don't know that that's something your opponent will do here, but sometimes they'll store one in the sideboard so that they can get it with Cunning Wish, and it's not just like a guaranteed win.
right. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so I would start by pulling 4 Swords to Plowshares for those 4 cards that you picked out. And now it's a question of like, is this Graveyard Hate that's awkward and only sometimes good better than anything else that's in the deck? Like,
My sense is that these Solitude are never going to get played, and they don't have any targets.
okay,
So the equity that I get from seeing my opponent's hand and potentially like slowing them by a turn and a half is probably better than that card.
sure. I,
Okay.
I think you have a bunch of very awkward cards for this matchup. And while like I'm not really happy with either Surgical or Rest in Peace, like doing what you're doing here is totally reasonable.
Okay.
Like
Starting with
unless
sorry, go
opponent
ahead.
just totally jukes us and has like Murktide Regent as like a pivot plan or something, we're not expecting the graveyard to be super relevant.
See, now I'm kind of freaked out. All right. Let me go ahead and hedge a little bit.
I think the Solitude is better than the Swords to Plowshares for what it's worth. Like Solitude is still a 3/2, right? Solitude still attacks. Swords to Plowshares doesn't attack.
Do we have time? No, we do not. Hand is a bit slow, but it has a Thalia.
Yep. This hand is okay. It's not any better than okay.
I mean,
Like,
in an 80 card deck, I'm not super inclined to mulligan it, but like I see, I think like more times than not, this hand just gets run over when they keep 7. But what do you think?
I think you can go either way with this one. I think an Aethersworn Canonist hand is better. I think a Spirit of the Labyrinth hand is better. I think a Deafening Silence hand is better. Most other hands are of approximately that value.
Okay,
This is a very good hand that loses if your opponent answers Ether Vial.
let's try it.
Yeah, I would consider throwing this back on 6, on 7, or sorry, I would consider throwing this back on 7. On 6, though, I think it's fine. If one of the Vial resolving or you draw a planes in 2 or 3 draw steps happens, like, this hand is totally good.
Yeah.
The other nice
White.
thing,
Uh,
the other nice thing about High Tide specifically as a combo matchup is that they're slow to go off. Like, turn 3s are possible, but quite rare. Turn 4
Okay.
starts to be the turn where it's like, this is about the time that I can reasonably go off.
Yeah.
And turn 5, it's like, okay, it's pretty easy to go off.
Okay, yeah.
All right, hand's great.
Never didn't have it. So out of interest of not getting dazed and having the, I think I want to play the spirit.
I would play a spirit. Like, your opponent's deck is absolutely full of cantrips.
Yeah, highest upside, and then it's replaceable in a way. So
Yeah, your opponent's likely to... Oh, nope, no impulse. Okay. I figured your opponent held up 2 mana, and it was just, like, pretty likely to be impulse.
impulse, man. Imagine.
It's something that doesn't technically draw a card.
Right. Yeah. It's been a long time since I've seen people play impulse. I guess
Yeah.
impulse sometimes get played in show and tell or some of those decks, maybe. Like, or am I?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, let's do the thing, and then Thalia is kind of like a port, so I want to play that. I think.
Yeah, absolutely. It's also technically protectable via Caracas, although these decks are going to be more likely to bounce your creatures than to outright kill them.
Right. Yeah. Some echoing truth, vapor snag, some things. So I feel like I want to get this saga online.
Is that true? How are you using your mana for the next couple of turns? Isn't it probably porting and playing that second Spirit of the Labyrinth?
Yeah.
I don't think you want to be making constructs right now, and I don't think you getting an Aether Vial out of your deck is, like, super crazy good.
Yeah. Right.
All right, so before it happens, what beats you? How might you lose from this position?
My own ignorance for one.
That is always a killer, an insidious
Yeah.
one.
I seems to be an abundant source of my demise. So my opponent goes, high tide, turnabout, snap. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, see, like the chain for, I don't play Storm and Vintage Cube. I just know it sucks to lose to. I know it's in it, but like I don't actually know the sequence too
Oh,
well.
geez, that feels bad for the opponent.
Yeah. Yeah, their hand must be badish.
All right, so to talk about some tech that I've seen in Twitter screenshots, one weird thing that could potentially beat us from this situation is something like a dress down. A dress down coming in at end of turn, turning off our creature's abilities, and then like them proceeding to combo off through it would be something that could potentially beat us. But if opponent's fetching out Snap, they probably don't have an answer to something like that immediately.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
So
so
now
so
I'm up
get in there
to
for your damage, and we'll deploy the second spirit. Yeah, the games versus High Tide don't tend to go this well. It is a difficult matchup for Death and Taxes.
yeah, my legacy games are not usually this straightforward. Opponents tend to be doing a little bit more, but sometimes just get lucky. Okay, my opponent is, I think, they don't play land this turn. I think they're just dead.
Probably.
Yeah.
Like there's worlds where they can survive, but it's hard to both survive and win from this situation.
Yeah.
'Cause we're starting to get into the situation where like fetch lands and Force of Wills and stuff start to become dangerous for our opponent.
Yeah. All right, let's do the math here on the second saga. 2, 2. Yeah, makes sense.
I think the game is over before that second saga becomes relevant in most cases.
Right. So to the porting timeline, opponent has snap in hand.
Yeah, you can just wait if you want.
Yeah.
With the opponent missing land drops though, like it's quite hard to like put up a winning line from their side of the battlefield.
Yeah.
They needed like what is it? Teferi's the Teferi's Protection, is that the blue enchantment that phases stuff out? There's a
Uh,
blue 1 enchantment like or maybe it's Teferi's Realm. Maybe it's Teferi's Realm.
is that like a Mirage or Visions card or
Oh,
something? Or?
it's like super old, yeah.
Yeah. Huh.
Super bugged on Magic Online, doesn't tend to work. Gets bugged different ways too.
Yeah. From the. Okay. Yeah. No, I don't know. I don't think I know it.
Yeah, I forget the exact wording, but it's something like at the beginning of each upkeep, you choose one of like I forget it's like artifact, creature, enchantment, land, or something like that, and all the ones of the chosen type phase out. It's a super wild card.
Wow. That's quite something. Yeah, that ain't that bad. But prismatic ending. Hell of a card.
Yes. Okay, yeah, it is Teferi's Realm. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player chooses artifact, creature, land, or non-aura enchantment. All non-token permanents of that type phase out. Okay, and
Oh,
there's the concession. Hey, if you made it this far in the video, it's pretty obvious that you're enjoying my content. Consider doing something to help me, whether it's something as small as leaving a like or subscribing to my channel, or doing something cool like doing a donation deck list, or even cooler, a dealer's choice donation deck list. Just saying, I get to do shenanigans every time that happens. Okay, back to the show. All right, as always, what do you think of your opening hand?
well, if this Aether Vial gets countered, we're sad indeed. But I have a draw. I have a lot of land in my deck. And resolving this Aether Vial could be very good. I would keep this hand.
Okay. I think there's a lot of times where you keep this hand and you instantly die. So to just show you what I mean, you lose to a discard spell, you lose to a daze, you lose to a force of will, you lose to a force of negation, you lose to a prismatic ending, you lose to an abrupt decay. There's going to be a lot of things that just outright beat this hand.
Yeah.
It's very good if it works and very, very bad if it doesn't. I don't know that I want to keep this in a game 1 scenario blind. You can, and we can see where it goes, but I would mulligan and try to find something safer.
Yeah, let's try to do what I don't often do and die to. So putting back a land, I feel like I just have to draw gas and the Aether and sort of ride the Foundry in the mid game until I draw stuff.
I think this hand is going to be a keep. The question is, like, what card goes back?
Yeah, I mean, my thought was to play the plane, to put back a planes.
Okay, so I'm going to ask a couple of questions. What good is this Solitude doing in your hand?
Currently none, but it
Okay.
represents the possibility of something good.
Okay. What good is this Jitte doing in your hand?
It represents these 1/1s being better than they really are.
Okay, now let's contrast this to what does this third land drop do for you?
it allows me to put Yorion in my hand,
It allows you to
which is
put Yorion into hand,
solitude.
and I don't know the count off the top of my deck in a Yorion pile, but you have a absolute crap ton of 3-drops in your deck, right? I would say your third planes is valuable here.
Okay, so the
I would throw
Jitte.
back either the Jitte or the Solitude, personally.
Okay, I think I'm less keen on the Jitte.
No matter how you look at it, this is a hand that is going to be very slow. Like, if you keep the Jitte, your plan is like retro foundry into make a creature into play Jitte equip. That's super slow. Similarly, this Solitude either requires you to pitch a card or to make 2 more land drops than what you currently have, or to put a vial up to 5. Everything with this hand is slow.
Yeah. Okay.
I think in the Yorion decks, keeping hands that are land heavy are a little bit more okay because you always have Yorion as a closer.
Yeah.
And yeah, and play your violent pass. Something bad probably happens to it in some way or another, but
Yeah, probably not long for this world. What set is that?
I believe the original Aether Vial was like one of the Darksteel type ones, or is
Yeah, but
it a reprint?
this is like some
Oh,
square on its a little.
well, look, there's so much Magic product coming out that no one knows what the symbols look like anymore.
It's really, man, I used to pride myself on I knew all the cards. I always got, and then I was like, it doesn't matter anymore. And I don't know any of the commander cards. So I'm just like, forget it. Like alchemy?
Oh boy.
No. Not.
Oh, this is spicy.
So is this like a food chain deck or something? What is this?
I'm gonna see what my opponent finds, and then I'll tell you what I think. I have a guess. Okay, they're taking a while. I've played Nick Fit decks with Living Wish sideboards before.
Allurin?
Know that
But
some
it
of
would be an
those
80 card.
blue-green decks need Living Wish. Like, they've got enough good cards that they don't necessarily have to do that. It's just a Brazen Borrower. Weird.
Opponent, a true originalist. Okie dokie, artichoke. Let's get this thing down.
I guess our opponent also could straight up be playing just like a bug control deck or something that has like Living Wish for powerful hate cards like Plague Engineer, Brazen Borrower, and whatnot.
Yeah, that's a thing you can do.
Yeah, I think it's going to take us a couple turns to figure out exactly what our opponent is doing, though. But definitely, like, the needle of, like, what kind of deck are you is pointed in the, like, mid-range control direction right now.
Yeah.
We'll see if our opponent goes for an upkeep bounce on this Aether Vial in response to this trigger.
Indeed.
Yep.
So I like playing the recruiter out.
What are you getting?
Just the Stoneforge Mystic.
Okay, so just in the absence of knowing what your opponent is doing, you just want to get them dead?
I think, yeah, because it just seems like between, I mean, so I can get, because my opponent's shown himself willing to attack in the air now.
All right, never mind. Like,
now.
we just
Now I
drew.
kind of just
Yeah.
want to play the Vial and the Mystic.
Okay, so order, which one are you playing first?
Mystic.
Okay, let's do it. We play the Mystic around Daze. I don't think Daze is going to be in our opponent's deck, but it costs very little to play this one first, and your opponent probably is not going to Force of Will the Aether Vial that they just bounced out of play.
Yeah. Yeah, this thing's got the same symbol. Huh. So Brazen Bar makes me kind of less interested in getting Caldera since we have Shatter, so Batter Skull rather.
Yeah, I think it's totally reasonable to just grab the Jitte.
Yeah.
Like, the Caldera is the best piece of equipment on this board, but there's very little difference between Batterskull and Caldera in a game that goes very long. And we don't know exactly what our opponent is doing, but if we think they're, like, mid-range to control in some way, like, it's totally reasonable to not care about that one extra turn if we expect that this is going to be a game that goes to turn 15.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, it is Alurin.
Okay. Okay, so I can play this Recruiter at the guard when I want to, though, hey?
You can.
So I should play it.
So if you're not afraid of getting comboed off right at this exact moment at instant speed, you can play Recruiter of the Guard, grab a Skyclave Alurin.
That's what I want to do.
Okay. Yeah, the only thing that's awkward here is if your opponent has, like, multiple other creatures in hand that they play in response, and like, if they have the combo in hand and they don't need to dig for it, it can be slightly awkward.
Yeah, for sure.
But, like, doing this while, like, that Baleful Strix is still on the stack, so they can't, like, Cavern Harpy bounce that, is reasonable.
Okay, yeah. Moss Monster in the house.
All right, so we are playing against an Alurin deck with a Living Wish package. A lot of times these decks have been winning via a Sararak, the Lich. Are you familiar with that one?
It's the new one, but I do not remember what that card does.
Okay. The gist of it is that it's a 1-card combo once you have an Alurin. You just get to, like, put it in play, repeatedly bounce it in and out of play, and drain your opponent for 1 each cycle through it you play.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Endurance.
Ah,
Aha. So they had it in their main deck.
yeah. So
So I lose.
yeah. So if you just kind of want to see how this works, you can let them do it for a minute.
Returns owner's hand adventure into the dungeon. Attack each opponent. Okay. All right. Let's see how this goes.
So how this works, and you probably just want to yield to this thing.
Just F6 through this thing. Yeah.
So they're allowed to bounce this thing back to its hand with its own ability. And now they venture in. And you can see that at the Dark Pools stage of this, you drain 1. And then they are going to repeat this process. So they get to combo you out.
Okay.
So
Okay.
now that you understand how it works, feel free to concede.
Wait, the Dark Pools is in the third.
Yes.
So there's no way to interact with the dungeon venturing, though, is there? No.
No, not really. So
No.
this is what I was talking about with the Recruiter of the Guard play, where if they have the combo in hand already and you pull the trigger on Recruiter of the Guard, it's bad because this happens. Whereas if they don't have the combo in hand yet, and, like, they're trying to dig for it, or they need, like, a Cavern Harpy baseline where they bounce this Baleful Strix, you potentially stop it there. It's made more awkward by the fact that you don't have another pitch card for this Solitude here to, like, potentially take the Sararak out of play.
How do they I mean, I'm not sure I read this correctly or if I really read it well enough at all. Had I played the Solitude line, I still wouldn't be able to interact with this, would I?
Okay, so how it works is a Sararak's trigger goes on the stack, and its trigger allows it to bounce itself, right? So in response to its trigger that would return it to its hand, you pitch cast a Solitude.
Okay. Okay. That's fun. Okay.
Yeah, and we won't make our opponent click through this because it is absolutely miserable.
Yeah, it looks like it. Okay. Lauren. So let's see.
What do you like?
Canonist.
That sounds great.
Containment Priest doesn't do it. Lauren says you can cast it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Containment Priest would turn your Flicker Wisps into nukes, which is sometimes relevant in this matchup. But a lot of times flickering something out of play for one turn is reasonable.
Okay. Can't cast spells from graveyards or libraries. This shuts off Uro only, basically, I think, right?
Mm-hmm.
This Sararak is a triggered ability.
Yep.
I think, right? Well,
you could just play the Council's Judgment as a general catch-all. It's something that can take an Uro out of play. It's something that can take an Alurin out of play if they pass the turn. And then you can consider like a Rest in Peace or a Grafdigger's Cage for Uro-based reasons, but it's not like it's super necessary.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think I don't necessarily like the Prelate.
Why not?
The Foundry and
So
Shadow Spear, probably not.
yeah, you probably don't need Shadow Spear. You probably don't need Foundry. If you're going to take out 2 artifacts, you might want to consider putting the Grafdigger's Cage in. Like, it's not fantastic, but it's something that stops Uro. And you've boarded out Sanctum Prelate. Your mind is probably at, I put this on 1. Change your viewpoint to, I put this on 4.
I like Sanctum Prelate.
Yes. All of a sudden, I have changed my mind.
Card. Brilliant card. Okay. And then I like all my creatures. This Timeless Dragon seems mopey.
It's a little awkward against a Baleful Strix deck. Your Jitte is also a little awkward that I see you hovering over.
Yeah. All right. Due to them not having it this time.
Yep. And like you could have played more conservatively by not playing the Recruiter. It's just legitimately a question of like what build are they? Like, do they have the Acererak's? Do they have the Acererak in hand? Like there's a world where they don't. Ew. So the Living Wish probably shows us that there's one Acererak in the opponent's sideboard that they can wish for. That's probably what that shows us.
And Plague Engineer. And
yeah, and we saw the Brazen Borrower.
They have Leovold and an Uro. And so I'm going to keep this.
Absolutely. And we've got 5 lands. We can throw back a Plains pretty easily here. Ooh. Welcome to Legacy, friend. It's been a little while since I've seen you.
I'll say, who is this guy? Who's this Bird of Paradise card? Next turn is potentially an Uro and cantripping and living wishing.
So you don't have to worry about being comboed off on this turn. You don't have to worry about that until 4 mana. So you're kind of questioning.
Next turn.
Go ahead.
I think I want to put Spirit down to shut off an Uro, draw, and cantrips potentially.
Sure, sounds good. Yeah, it's just a question of like do you want to play a hate piece now, or do you want to try to go like Cauldron as quickly as possible? And I think the spirit is correct, because next turn you almost certainly want to play your Canonist so that you can't just immediately be comboed off. And so if you play the Stoneforge this turn, that means you're not activating uh, it next turn.
Of course, didn't think about the Thoughtseize in the deck.
No, it's fine, right? Like, we still have a reasonable 3-1 in play. We still have a reasonable follow-up for next turn as well. Yes, and we did straight up see blue-green lands last time, so.
Yeah. Okay. So we can't give some. We can flash in the Coatl.
Yeah, if they do, it trades with Spirit, but it won't have drawn a card. Just a question of, like, do you want to play around Coatl? And then the other question is, like, are you playing an Urza Saga this turn, or are you just playing Stoneforge?
I feel like I'm
And
playing.
Plains.
I feel like my thought is to play Saga into Stoneforge. Now I kind of wish I had that Jitte.
Okay, so the awkward thing here is that if you play Saga this turn and your intention is to activate Stoneforge Mystic next turn for Kaldra, then you tick up that Urza Saga without actually getting a creature out of it. So you might want to consider basic planes this turn.
Okay. Okay, and I think I don't know with this hand if I can afford. I mean, I don't know. So what like they trade with it? They're free to start drawing cards and doing their thing.
Yeah, you can feel free to play conservatively on this one.
I
Like, you
think,
can just
yeah.
play Stoneforge past the turn and put them in the driver's seat as far as, like, answering your stuff goes. Like, if you get a Caldra into play, that's a 4-turn clock on its own, just, like, totally discounting the Spirit attacking at all. All right, and this may be an Ice Fang. Oh, it's a Fatal Push instead. Yeah, so opponent is ultimately Bug Alluring. They do have the ability to technically cast the Acererak. They have more black than I expected.
Yeah. Looks probably just like a lot of Thoughtseize are probably main deck though, right?
Probably.
Yeah. This card. Okay.
Yeah, we don't really care about that right now.
No, I don't think so.
That's not a card that has anything to say about this Caldra.
Oh, I like that, I guess. Suppose I could have played around days.
Yeah, don't worry about it. This I would go ahead and take your attack, and then we can play the Stoneforge post combat. To be honest, I don't even know if you would have paid for a daze if your opponent had one.
Yeah, I don't think I would have. So my opponent plays a Lurin and a Sararak. I lose, but I don't really think I'm in a position to like.
Yeah, so you could consider holding this Stoneforge Mystic to pitch to a Solitude. Like, the Stoneforge Mystic fetches a Batterskull, which is cool, but, like, you can wait, see if you draw another card next turn, and next turn you can play Stoneforge and then use your other Stoneforge to just put one in, or you can just hold this stuff back and start making Urza Saga construct tokens. You're not necessarily in a situation where you just, like, have to play that Stoneforge or you're going to die to the bodies that are on board.
Yeah.
Opponent's holding back while tapped out here. I wonder if they have green card plus Force of Vigor.
Okay. Which I suppose I would be kind of okay with because it means it's not something that kills me.
Yeah, like our situation's fine here. We've got the better clock. The opponent's waiting here. They may have an answer to this Urza Saga. Nope. Okay.
Alrighty.
Yeah, I just crashed in for the 5. Like your Stoneforge Mystic has some amount of value for just sitting in play here. Sure. So now you can consider playing Stoneforge for a Batterskull if you want, or you can just straight up make a couple of Urza Saga construct tokens and hold back the Solitude or the Stoneforge to pitch to Solitude.
So we're gonna have a couple of 4/4s. Yeah, I feel like I'd rather be conservative considering.
Yeah, the way you lose this game right now is your opponent like happening to have both a Sararak and a Lauren. Like with access to Batterskull in the not too distant future. Like essentially just Batterskull once you draw a white card that you're comfortable pitching. I don't think you have to worry too much here. Yeah, so your opponent's not even willing to attack with Leovold now because they're just scared of the combat damage.
All right.
Great. What are you grabbing with this?
I kind of feel like I want to take an Aether Vial to put the rest of this stuff in play, but I don't know. Definitely have problems with Uro, that's for sure.
Okay. Do you think you need to cast Aether Vial to win this game?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, then let's grab Grafdigger's Cage so an Uro isn't just disaster.
Okay.
All right, that's all fine. I'm somewhat surprised the opponent didn't like decay the other construct and then just like trade Leovold for the other one and just make their board, our board, much less scary.
Right. Yeah, that would have been.
But I guess they value their Leovold for things like wastelands and ports and whatnot.
Yeah. I guess, yeah, right in this brazen bar before there's a Batterskull in the equation.
Great. The 5th land's very good for us because now we have a Batterskull that's basically unkillable. So go ahead and attack in with your construct. Now, after blocks but before damage, you can Vial in this Batter Skull to get 1 more damage in this turn. And the cool thing here is that now you have 3 mana available, so you can just pick up the Batter Skull in response to a removal spell. And it just becomes like just very obnoxious to actually get this Batter Skull out of play.
Yeah. Okay. Opponent does not seem to have much.
Nope.
Nope.
Yeah, this is probably about the point where we just kind of run over them. Like once we gain this first set of life here, it's so difficult for them to come back from this position.
And I don't even want to necessarily Caracas their Leovold.
Oh no, absolutely not. That can stay in play.
Right.
Opponent is thinking a whole lot here. It has me nervous that they have like some reasonable castable card and they're just trying to like wiggle for a good spot to cast it. But maybe that's just me reading too much into this situation.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like endurance or something, maybe. But I don't know what else you wouldn't have cast.
Did they just declare no blocks and go to combat damage, by the way? Yes. just gave that one up.
Yeah. Okay. Clearly no endurance. So I have all these birds of paradise. We're on the draw. Probably still too slow to consider though, huh?
I
Bring
mean,
it in the
it's
DK?
it's one slot. You can potentially find one slot to cut. So, for example, like how much value is there in the 4th Thalia? Like Thalia is only medium versus the opponent's deck since they're playing so many creatures. Like Thalia doesn't line up well versus an endurance, for example. And you can cut one of those pretty reasonably.
Okay. Knowing about Thoughtseize is good. Knowing about Fatal Push, so good. Okay. This hand seems pretty good.
Oh, absolutely. Like you've got a redundant vial for if the first one gets decayed or thought seized. Like you have 3 other cards that are relevant in some way in the matchup. It's not like Cathar Commando is a slam dunk or anything, but it's something that can sit in play and threaten to blow up an Alurin. Um, Otherwise, like it attacks for 3.
Not sure it matters so much. I don't think they play Wasteland in the Lure Index, do they?
I don't think so. Like maybe there's a weird one of Wasteland in the sideboard for Living Wish or something, but
Yeah.
opponent's deck is pretty basic heavy.
Okay.
I mean, that's something for a Cathar Commando to take out in another turn or two.
Absolutely. So I feel like getting this Thalia down. And surprising them with the Cathar Commando.
Yeah, in an ideal world, you rip another land next turn so that you can both do something for 2 mana and, like, Violin Cathar Commando take out Sylvan Library.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I think your plan of playing the Thalia is fine. It makes a couple of your cards in hand currently a little bit worse, but it makes it harder for your opponent to A, deploy cards with Sylvan Library, and B, answer your actual Ether Vial.
Okay. Drawing up a storm. So we have an Uro.
Could see like a Plague Engineer.
Okay.
All right. Land is so good.
Oh.
Thank you.
Oh.
Yeah, so this Cathar Commando ends up being effectively uncounterable because of Thalia here. Yeah, it's just a shame that the opponent took 2 cards off of the Sylvan Library immediately, so they've gotten their value out of that card.
Yeah.
But I don't think we can let that card sit there and just filter our opponent's draws. Like, there is a world where you just, like, put that 3/1 in play and say, like, I'm going to try to kill you as quickly as possible, deal with it. But that's a super aggro world that can go very poorly. Like, if your opponent plays a Plague Engineer.
Yeah, Plague Engineer. They got a lot of bad things in there. What do they do with that?
Oh, super happy to see more lands, by the way.
So it's like a Vial and a Stoneforge Mystic turn for me.
Sure, that's reasonable. And then we can keep Solitude plus Rest in Peace in hand as a way to disrupt a combo if that happens. So is this Force of Will? No, it's not Force of Will. Okay. Life just got hard for our opponent.
Bring the action. And
Okay. I mean, that means the Vial is resolving. The opponent either needs, like, Greenland plus a Sararak to attempt to combo off, or they need something that answers the Stoneforge. Or they're pretty much dead immediately.
Yeah.
I keep thinking it's going to be Plague Engineer, and it's never been Plague Engineer.
No, that's
Okay, that keeps him alive.
yeah. Into Plague Engineer.
Nope.
Okay. Let's see. They shuffle.
All right, so the attacking part of the turn is easy. What are you doing with the rest of your turn?
Hmm.
How do you lose?
Well, it kind of seems like when you put it like that I should keep an Allurin out of play.
Okay. So that means we're going to want to Rashad import one of our opponent's green sources, meaning that playing a Spirit of the Labyrinth here is probably our best play.
Yeah.
Like, the issue with, like, just activating the Urza Saga here is that you can't deny a mana while doing that.
Right.
I would grab the Bayou.
Yeah. Second green for...
Yeah, it's the second green, and it's also the second black for if our opponent is playing something wild out of the sideboard, like a Liliana the Last Hope or something like that.
Okay.
While something like that wouldn't be super common, it would super suck.
Yeah. Okay.
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 I mean, we still have lethal showing.
Draws. Concedes. Oh, I'm just gonna let that go to the graveyard and play
Yeah, absolutely.
Draw for it. Lovely. Well, I guess I just can get Cage and I can keep the rest in peace for hand with Solitude.
Sure.
Probably want to keep this. So let's see. No, I guess I can use it. I guess I can make a guy.
So the thing here is that
actually,
your opponent has this opposition agent. So let's take our draw. And then we can decide whether or not we want to do something crazy like Solitude, this opposition agent, to search. So, like, we could Solitude, pitch Rest in Peace on opposition agent. It brings our opponent to 8. We attack them back down to 3, and we do get Grafdigger's Cage. Or we can just say, like, you can have an Aether Vial. I care more about this Rest in Peace than this Solitude.
I think I feel basically the same about Cage and 8th and Rest in Peace, but I would like that opposition agent. Yeah, I would rather get in for 5 here.
Okay, so you want a Solitude?
Yeah.
All right, so
Porting.
say that again.
I mean, are we still porting to shut off?
Yeah, we're still probably porting, which means you're just going to float a mana here. You'll use that to play an Aether Vial. And you'll grab this Cage. You have a mana floating already.
Oh, yes, same.
Yeah.
No.
So, yeah. So we hit our opponent back to 3. Got a Rashad import again. We're a little softer to the actual combo now, but it should be pretty hard for them to combo off. So them comboing off requires green land plus Allurin plus a Sararak in 4 cards. Not impossible, but pretty unlikely.
Yeah. Okay. Okie dokie.
All right, there is our concession. It's a little laggy, but it is there.